Good morning and welcome to the Return to Food 7-Day Challenge. This is day 6 of the 7-Day Challenge, Saturday. And many of you might actually be watching this as a recording because Saturday is your first day from the week of a day of rest. And so that's completely cool. I hope you had a good sleep in. I hope you were well rested. So today we're going to be talking about day 6 of the challenge, and I'm just quickly going to go into screen share to show you the dashboard. If you haven't already checked it out, the dashboard for day, just getting a little bit fun here. Okay, showing you the dashboard for today, day 6 of the challenge. So let's see, screen share. Let's go, here we go. Share, present to everyone. Okay, so this is what we are looking at today for the Return to Food 7-Day Challenge. And we have the introduction, as always, and today we are talking about dairy. We're also talking about mammoth moo-miss. So this is your expert video, is actually me, which is an excerpt from an article that I wrote, the one that I referred to in your materials that I wrote for the Selector magazine, which was followed intensely and responded to by the Dairy Corporation, and they wrote a stern letter back to the publisher because a lot of this information they don't want getting out, obviously, or they don't want people to have these perceptions about dairy. But it's really important for us to know both sides of the story after we've been indoctrinated for many years on the other. The philosophy covered today is pick your poisons. And there is one more, I believe there's one more video. Oh no, it's for yesterday. I forgot to mention, or I forgot to put up, there's a video, We Are Meant to Eat Together, as part of day 5 of the challenge. So that will be put into day 5 later on today. So it will be in there if you're catching up on your files and days, that's where they are. And just to let you know that the chia pudding recipe is part of the day 5, the 7 Recipes for Life ebook. So if you're actually looking for the video for that, it's with the same video that is the 7 Recipes for Life digital DVD, which is available on day 5. And the chia pudding recipe, there's a physical recipe here on day 6, but you'll want to go back to the video that you have the link to in your video links for Friday, the day 5. So that might sound a little bit confusing, but that's what's going on. So today it really is about cleaning out the poisons again from your life, further on to what we were talking about on day 5, and getting refined dairy out of our life for absolute sure, and at the very least getting refined dairy out and looking at alternative sources to dairy, because we as a species, as all mammals, are not meant to drink milk past the age of weaning, and definitely not meant to be drinking milk that is part of another beast that is meant to grow to 1,500 pounds. As I say in the materials, milk is very species specific. So we want to have, and also every species of mammals are meant to go off of milk past weaning. So humans have adapted to be able to eat certain foods, but there are certain foods that we were never meant to eat, and as a species. And tomorrow we're going to be talking about soy, and soy is another example of that. So very interesting stuff. I hope you're enjoying it. Okay, so here we are, back again. So the other thing, and I know, I apologize, I talk a lot about so. So is, I'm working on that thing to overcome saying so all the time. Okay, today I want to cover listening to that inner voice, and also getting healthy love from healthy sources. So often we are looking at getting love from our food. That's often people who are doing a program like Return to Food, who are drawn to this work, have had a life experience of getting love from from food instead of the healthiest sources. And the other thing too is that when we don't actually feel truly, truly good about ourselves, and that's very common in the world we live in today, we will actually choose foods that resonate on the same level vibrationally that we feel. Not how we want to feel, but on the level that we feel. And many years ago, I saw charts around the electromagnetic frequency of foods and how the more connected a food was to nature, the higher the electromagnetic charge. So fresh fruits and vegetables were around, I believe, 200 megahertz. And chocolate cake and pizza were like 0 to 5. And so if you think about, we are vibrational beings, and our emotions, as we learn about in the Return to Food 8-week program, our emotions actually resonate at certain levels, and love, being the highest, and, anger and depression being quite low. And so when we are feeling low, we are often attracted to foods that resonate at a low level. And you remember I was talking yesterday about strong choices for a strong life. They require strength to actually make those choices, but they make us stronger for having made them. And weak choices for a weak life. They're easy to make those choices, but they actually weaken us, or they make us lazy, or we atrophy mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, whatever those choices are, whether that is getting up in the morning to go and, move our bodies, lift some weights, do some yoga, that kind of thing. Those choices are strong choices, and they make us stronger. And then the lying in bed, and I'm not talking about occasionally on a Saturday when, you've had a full day of getting up super early, but if we just continually stop doing that, muscles atrophy, and we can make those same decisions in all areas of our life. So with our work and with our relationships, the continual strong choices, strong life. And here's the other thing about this. Lower vibrational frequency, higher vibrational frequency. So if you're wanting to get more out of life, these are the strong choices we need to make. And one of the big things around this is starting to come from a place of love, a sense of worthy, a sense of deserving. And that's why if you looked at the last illustration on the video, We're Meant to Eat Together, it's got me doing the peace sign, and you are enough. I am enough, right? So I strongly encourage you to do that pop it on your mirror, pop it anywhere to really reinforce those images in your mind, those messages in your mind. So getting love from healthy sources, what does that mean? Well, sometimes we use food to get love, and dairy is definitely one of those foods that we typically use to get love. And the reason why is because we have such strong associations with dairy, and being suckling with our mother, who was our first really dramatic experience of love for most of us, in most of our case, that connection, that bonding. And sometimes when we go into a world, as we're walking in the world, we feel alone, we feel unloved. And that visceral memory of suckling milk that had opiates in it, that was that addictive substance that kept us suckling so that we increased our chances of survival, gave us this beautiful feeling of love and well-being. And you couple the drug-like feeling with the actual being held by your mom and the intense love she would have felt for you, and how that would have transferred to you, hopefully, if that was your experience. And that connection to milk becomes incredibly, incredibly emotional. And we can actually become addicted past the point of when we are weaned and our body's no longer producing the enzyme to break down the proteins in milk. We will actually override our body's natural signs to say, I don't want to eat that, to get that feeling of love. And I know many of you out there have had the experience in life where you're of a generation where when you didn't want to drink your milk because your body was actually saying no, you were forced to drink milk. And sometimes some parents would actually bribe their children or put sweet things into the milk to get them to do it because they thought they were doing the right thing for the child, even though the child's body was saying, no, I don't want this. This does not make me feel good initially. And so it's kind of this funny relationship. And then we can transfer it to all foods, in the sense that all foods that elicit a drug-like reaction, that give us a feeling that we may not have in the present moment, and we may not have the cognizance to actually replicate that feeling. We may not have the ability or the awareness around it to actually create that feeling within us. And so we often will choose a food that gives us that feeling. And sometimes that food that we love in the moment doesn't love us back. It might be seductive. It might give us certain drug-like feelings. We might feel high for a second, and then we drop down. And it's kind of like an unhealthy romantic relationship, where you choose someone who feels good in the moment, but there's these other kind of dynamics that are going on that are kind of icky, that make you feel bad afterwards. And you're kind of going, why am I drawn to this person? Why do I keep going back to this person when I know that the interaction, what they're giving me, is really unhealthy, and it's not true love. So yesterday I was giving a presentation at a law firm in Vancouver. It reminded me of my days working at Mallison's in Australia, in Melbourne. I walked into the offices, and it's on the 20th floor on Burrard Street in Vancouver, and it was like being back in Melbourne. Obviously, the view from the windows wasn't as dramatic. Was more dramatic, actually, with the beautiful oceans and mountains than Melbourne. But it was like these law firms all have the same architect and interior designers. They're laid out very similar. It's quite interesting. Anyway, I was telling them that you basically kind of have two groups of food to choose from. There's the addictive foods and the non-addictive foods. And I said, guess which one's healthier for us? And of course, we know. And so what's happening is, even if we make the non-addictive foods that taste great, like the vegetables, which are the most powerful of the non-addictive foods, right? Even if it tastes great, we have a visceral memory of the addictive foods that, even if they don't taste so good, what will happen is our body's palate will override that terrible taste, because the memory of the drug-like reactions that's happening in our body is so compelling, we will eat it. And I said, here's an example. How many of you have ever tasted a horrible cup of coffee? And lots of hands go up. And I said, how many of you actually finished a horrible tasting cup of coffee? So we're funny humans, we really are. When we realize that we are truly driven by addiction, we are highly addictive beings, and we are often driven by these drug-like responses in food and how they make us feel. And we start to understand, oh, okay, I'm having this food because I want to feel a certain way. And the work that you do, within the return to food philosophies is really all about generating those feelings internally from yourself. So when you start to have the ability to generate that feeling of I'm enough, I am loved, I'm of value, I'm safe, all those things, when we can start to generate those feelings internally, we're much less likely to go to a food source, this addictive food source, to make us feel a certain way. Because as you know, with anything that's addictive, there's a high and then there's a low, right? And depending on how that food is processed and the degree to which it's processed, the high corresponds with the low. So you have a corresponding low to meet the high that you've had. And a really interesting example of that is coffee. When you have really good, well-crafted coffee, so where care is being taken every step along the way, from growing the bean to growing it without pesticides and caring for it and roasting it and selecting quality and all that kind of thing, and made by a good barista, the actual high is much softer, and the low is not as rough. Whereas if you have coffee that's grown with chemical pesticides and it's just a crop that's made commodity, and the people who are growing it aren't treated well, and it's kept in storage, and then there's chemicals added to it, and it's highly processed, all that kind of thing, and then it's roasted, and they advanced glycated end products actually develop, and they're developed more crudely, as the chemicals within them react differently. You've got all kinds of nasty chemical reactions that are going on. You have that cup of coffee and you go, and then you get this kind of jittery, really nasty kind of low. And that's true with many drugs. So the refining of the drug, the process of the drug, the care of the drugs within the food that we're processing often intensify with more extreme refining and processing. That is why that the philosophy, pick your poisons, is all about, if you are going to have something that's toxic and addictive, is to find the very best and the highest quality source that you can have, because every culture on the earth has something that's addictive, like cacao, big in the superfood world. There's also addictive properties within it, and there's going to be drug-like highs and lows from that. But there's a big difference between having a very natural raw cacao that has not been mistreated and comes from organic beans, than to have something that's highly processed and refined with toxic chemicals, right? So this whole process of getting love from healthy sources carries over in all areas of our life. And one of the things that I believe is really important is that we source our love internally, that we actually turn and look into that mirror. And if you need to, write "I am enough" on the mirror and really breathe it in and feel it. And I promise you, when you start to do these things, you will notice it's subtle at first, but then when you start to look back, the shift that takes you from that place of eating from a low vibrational level, as you raise your vibrational level, you will be attracted to better quality foods. As you feel internally that you are enough, you're going to actually see that in your food, that it is enough. Okay, so I'm just looking at my notes. Okay, so we do have time, obviously, for questions. They may or may not come. They don't seem to be coming. But that's not a problem, because, as you know, I'm happy to talk. And remember, if you are watching this late and you have questions, you can always ask your questions on the Facebook page. And if you want to make sure I absolutely see your question and answer it, if you can just mention my name in the post, I'm much more likely to get it. If you mention it and it actually connects to my name and then it gets highlighted, I'm much more likely to see it. Sometimes I've missed them because my name wasn't mentioned. And it flags me if my name's mentioned. So the challenge today is to make almond milk, or if you're allergic to almonds, to make some kind of seed or nut milk. And that involves soaking your nuts overnight, peeling them if they're almonds, because the anti-nutrients in the peel. And the video you have of me making almond milk, I made it with a nut milk bag, where I took the almond and the pulp and I squeezed it in a nut milk bag. Today, I actually make almond milk. My evolution today is that I actually peel the almonds and I make the milk whole, and I don't actually strain it, unless very rarely. Sometimes I just feel like a cup of tea with the almond milk in it. Sometimes I'll just strain it for 1 cup of tea, so I don't get the kind of the textured fibers in my throat after the tea. Not very nice. So that's your challenge for the Saturday of the Return to Food 7-Day Challenge. The other thing that I want to plant the seed in your mind is, my ritual on Saturday morning is to go to the farmer's market. It has been for many years now. And it is one of my love things and my passion things. And just as some cultures would set up so they were within driving or walking or sourcing distance of water, which I am as well, I also set myself up so I can make it to the farmer's market. And the best farmer's market here in Vancouver is Trout Lake, in my opinion. And so I will actually drive a distance to go there. And as far as eating and sourcing my food locally, even driving to the farmer's market, which is 15 minutes away, is much closer than buying most of my food from a supermarket as far as food miles go. And it's worthwhile. And it's such a beautiful experience for me to actually connect and with the people who are growing my food, to be grateful, to be able to say thank you to them for growing organically, for biodynamically, and to be able to hand pick and select my food. Now, I don't know where you are in your evolution of your return to food, but for some people that can be really daunting. it can be overwhelming, the thought of, oh man, getting up on Saturday morning, getting kids together, all that kind of thing, to go and get your own food. But I want to assure you that there's something of great value in doing it. And just to illustrate this, when I first started going to farmers market, I was a little bit intimidated. I was nervous. I'd always shopped in supermarkets after all, you know, and occasionally I would go to like the Queen Victoria market, or I'd been, you know, when I'd travel, I went to the Borough market in London, or the market in Leicester, and occasionally one in Paris. But for most of the time of my life, it's been out of a supermarket up until that point of first going. And so there was like I was excited about it, but there's also a bit of a hesitation, you know, neophobia maybe, you know, something new and not being quite comfortable around it, and having to pay at each stall. There was little things that it took me time to get used to. And now it truly is the highlight of my social week. Even though I don't do a huge amount of interacting at the farmers market. Like last week I saw my friend Shayna, who's runs the Institute of Holistic Nutrition in Vancouver, and as I used to work there, you know, she just had her second baby, and her husband Ado was there with her, and her mother was there with her, who's been helping her with the baby. And Shayna tells me, you know, oh, we're surprising, you know, my mom and my dad's actually coming, and Ado's picking him up at the train, and he's flown all the way out from Toronto. And so I said to Shayna, can I grab your camera? And she's like, yeah. She just gives it to me. And so as her dad's coming towards her mom, I'm actually filming her mom's reaction. And then sadly the camera just stopped as she was like in amaze, and she was still trying to sort out that he was there. She couldn't believe it. And that shut off. But anyway, what I'm just saying is that there's opportunities to intersect with people in ways that bond you, and you feel close to people that will rarely ever happen in aisle 7 of the grocery store, as my friend Miranda Sharp used to say. That's not going to happen in aisle 7. And there is a deepening and a desire, as I've mentioned throughout this program, of social connection. We are meant to eat together, and farmers markets are a wonderful way of doing that. And the last story I want to leave you with is one where I went with a film crew in Australia. I was doing some pilot work for a documentary, and I had this idea to go to the farmers market and just ask people one question, and to go to the supermarket and ask the same question on the same morning in the same kind of proximity. And so I took the film crew to the farmers market, and I held out the microphone, and I asked the question, how do you feel about shopping on a Saturday morning? I didn't mention anything about farmers markets. I didn't mention anything about supermarkets. I just said, how do you feel about shopping on a Saturday morning? And I started to ask people, and you would not believe how amazing it was. They're like saying, it's the highlight of my social week. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm not the only food geek in the world, my tribe. And so they're like so animated and excited, and they're saying, we just love the produce here. And this was when I did this was at the Collingwood Children's Farmers Market in Australia, which I have to say is even more of a favorite for me than the Trout Lake Farmers Market. Maybe it's like a first love. That was my first love, true first love of a farmers market. And they do an awesome job of farmers markets, I think, in Melbourne, and it's pretty good here in Vancouver too. I'm blessed. You know, we're blessed. Northern Street Farmers Market in Queensland, awesome. Anyway, I digress. Going back, so people were lining up, and they were saying, you know, the food tastes better, you know, and as I mentioned, it's the highlight of our social week, and we get to talk to the farmers, and there's music, and there's social interaction, all of these things that really kind of bring us back to a place of where we really are meant to be, and that's connecting with people and really being in that place of food is not just an obligation. It is a gift. It's a pleasure. There's joy in it. There's abundance. I went, as I often do, I like to create converts to the farmers market, and my neighbors have just recently moved to the Netherlands, and their parents came over to visit them. And so little Rosalie, who's 8, loves to go to the farmers market. She goes, I want to go to the fresh market with you. It's my terrible Dutch accent, but anyway, she's so cute. Anyway, grandfather, so Fleur's father, was talking about the next day about all the different tomatoes, you know, in the supermarket. There's just 2 or 3, you know. He said, but there's like 10 and 20 varieties of tomatoes, and they're beautiful, all different colors, you know. And so these are wonderful experiences that you just can't have in a supermarket. They're not able to actually do that as best as they try. They're limited by certain restrictions. So my challenge to you is to make the almond milk and to consider going to a farmer's market. For you, it might be Saturday morning, or it might be Sunday morning, or maybe you're going to put it on your list because there's one during the midweek. They have the midweek here in Vancouver as well, and many places throughout the world. Different parts of Paris will have different farmers markets in different parts of the day. So this is something that is becoming more and more accessible to connect with the people who grow our food, so we can actually really see the person who's providing our food and get a sense of them and make a decision based on the integrity in which they're actually growing their food. And it's not unusual for me to develop friendships with, over the years, I've developed friendships with farmers at the farmers markets and stall holders. So I have friends, the beautiful Holy Goat ladies in Melbourne. There was always a big hug and a cuddle there each time I went to the Collingwood Children's Farm. And here, Ildiko is a jewelry maker at the farmers markets, and she makes the most beautiful jewelry, and I'm completely addicted to her products. She's talented, and there's just, you know, there's a hug and a natural connection, and you get to know people by name, and it's kind of like the foodies version of Cheers, you know, where you start to know each other, the stallholders, by name, and it's hello, and then you develop connections and you learn about the story, and the interweb of our connection is wonderful. And so what happens is, as you're shopping, you're built up and you're feeling good. Now, the end part of that story was I went to the supermarket. I had a long queue of people at the farmers market when I was interviewing people, and literally we had to stop because we didn't have time. But people were so animated and excited and enthusiastic. And I went to the supermarket right after and asked the same question: how do you feel about shopping on a Saturday morning? And it was like no one wanted to be interviewed. People were scurrying away and putting stuff into their boots, trunks, right? And just, no, I don't have time, I'm not interested, that kind of thing. And I convinced one woman to just answer one question. And I said, how do you feel about shopping at the farmer's market? Sorry, I said, how do you feel about shopping on a Saturday morning? And she said, I normally shop at the markets, but I'm in a hurry because I'm shopping. It's my grandson's birthday, and I needed a bunch of things for my grandson's birthday. Interesting, different dynamic, interesting, different feeling, totally different spirit. So the Return to Food Challenge is to make some almond milk today, and also to consider going to a farmer's market and just soaking in the vibe. This is the Return to Food 7-Day Challenge, day 6, and we're talking dairy, and we've got some cool videos for you to actually check out. Please go to the member section. And as always, if you have questions, if you have comments, if you want to share what you've made, recipes, things like that, please share them in the Facebook page. Good morning, happy Saturday, and enjoy your day.